Hi, this is Steve Felberg of Audible Originals. I'm immensely pleased to be chatting with Dennis E. Taylor, who's the author of the wildly popular Bobiverse series, along with The Singularity Trap and Outland. The latest in the Bobiverse series is the brand new Heaven's River, which is performed by the inimitable Ray Porter. And Dennis, first things first, congratulations on Heaven's River making the New York Times audio bestseller list.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of a lot of really pleasant surprises on this one.
You're a New York Times best-selling author. You can say that until forever,
Yeah.
until you go out in space as a clone.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to get on that list again. It's a nice thing, and I'd like to repeat it.
Yes, you and us both.
Yeah.
I wanted to start out. I think your fans might be interested to learn what you did for a living pre-Bobiverse.
Well, for most of my life, I was a computer programmer. Um, at various levels, from frontline grunt all the way up to upper management, but always in IT. So that's my background. That's my interest. That's where my personality goes. Programming.
But you don't do that anymore, right?
Not professionally. I mean, I still do it on a hobby basis. I've got a few small projects going, but nothing concerted.
So you could be my personal geek squad. I'm going to call you up when I have a problem.
Yeah, maybe not. I'm a little out of practice now. Actually, I need my own geek squad now. I need to find a network specialist.
Well, I'm curious, like, at what point did you realize that this writing thing could actually be your job?
February 2017.
What happened then?
That's when the first Audible payment came in for We Are Legion, and it was eye-opening. And I started to realize that no, this is an income. This is an actual viable means of paying the mortgage and stuff. Um, when Blaine and I were talking about the upcoming release of We Are Legion, we were talking about things like, wow, wouldn't it be great if it brought in a couple grand a month or something, and we could pay down our visa a little quicker and stuff like that. And it was still being looked at as what you'd call, I don't know, coffee money or something like that. But the reality just blew me away.
So did you quit your job? Like, did you call up and say, I'm done. I'm not going to be an IT guy anymore?
Not quite that quickly, but I did retire. I officially retired.
Um, your first published work was actually Outland, which you later revised for the Audible Originals edition. Was that your first attempt at writing a novel, or is there some secret lost novel locked in a drawer somewhere?
No, that was literally my first attempt at serious writing. And it wasn't even serious writing when I started. I just wanted to see if I could even do it.
And you just decided, I'm going to just go for this. I'm going to put this out there, see what happens, and then what?
Well, it went by stages. My wife basically dared me to try writing a novel based on a conversation we were having. And I started writing Outland. And I figured, worst comes to worst, I'll stop after a couple of chapters or something. But it kept going and going and going. And suddenly I had a novel. And then I had to figure out how you go about self-publishing on Amazon, which was an adventure in and of itself. I think it took me like 7 months to go from finishing the novel to actually having it published. And I put it up on Amazon, and well, it did make coffee money.
And your coffee is a lot less expensive up there than it is here.
Yeah, I don't drink specialty coffees.
It's interesting. So I think people hearing about your background in computers and programming and such will make the connection to the Bobiverse and kind of see where that knowledge came from and how that could spin itself off into an idea for a series of books. But was there a specific kind of aha moment where the idea for the Bobiverse hit you?
Bobiverse evolved. It started out as me reading World Out of Time by Larry Niven, which I loved. but there were some directions that he took it that I found a little disappointing. Like the protagonist comes back to the solar system and spends most of the book banging around in our solar system. I wanted him to stay out there and do stuff. So I started out with the idea of writing a version of that where the protagonist gets out there, and then I thought, well, he doesn't. If he's not alive, if he's just a computer program, then he can replicate himself. He doesn't have to worry about age. He doesn't have to worry about disease, stuff like that. And it just kept evolving. There were suggestions from you. There were suggestions from Ethan on improvements that I could make. It started out in third person, and I changed it to first person because it felt more immediate. The VR system I put in because the first version was just a bunch of talking heads, and there wasn't anything visual about it. So it snowballed.
You know, I think you mentioned the VR that the Bobs have and the moots that they have and all that, which to me is probably the most charming part of the series, because you very easily could have this group of intelligent ships out there just going their own way and not interacting. And that was kind of an ingenious way to bring them all together and have them interact, and even being able to jump around in timelines because you can have them in different places, but eventually still meet up. It also seems a little bit, I always thought, inspired by the holodeck and Star Trek, but I wonder if I'm on target there.
Well, I think the holodeck itself is an outgrowth of a lot of the ideas that have been in science fiction for quite a while. The idea of virtual realities have been around a long time, and unfortunately, usually when they invoke virtual reality in a book or a movie or a TV show or something like that, they have this thing: if you die in VR, you die in real, because you've got to have real stakes in order for the audience to care about the person. I wanted to avoid cliches like that because it never made sense to me, and I doubt it makes sense to most fans. So most of the danger happens in real. The VR is just there for them to have conversations and do setups and a little comic relief and stuff.
You know, one of the things I love about the Bobiverse books is how you handle the existence of clones and Bob's clones. I mean, you have clones that could be just precise carbon copies of the original, but you didn't do that. And, as we all know, as fans know, as the series progresses, we see more and more clones, and each one develops his own personality. It's very Orphan Black in that way, if people have seen Orphan Black. But you definitely also seem to take a stance of nurture over nature, that their experiences are what shapes each of the Bobs. Is that how you see it? Like, do you see it that this is why each one of them develops so differently?
Well, as explained in Heaven's River, there's actually an explicit reason why you get replicative drift. But regardless, I do think that even if each Bob started out exactly identical, they would diverge over time. Like Hal, who got blown up twice. Getting blown up twice will affect you.
I know it does me.
Yeah, that's right. There are so many minor and major things that happen to each of the Bobs that are so different. It'll just produce a different person in the end. And the replicative drift just makes it worse.
Yeah, and of course, this makes for a much richer universe that you've created, where you have these characters who are in essence the same, but in behavior and in experience are very different. And as you mentioned, this idea of replicative drift really comes into play in Heaven's River in a big way, because we're now many, many, many years down the road in the evolution of the Bobs. And it's very clear that some of them, I think, don't see themselves possibly as even being Bobs anymore.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine how that would transpire in your mind, because if you think about any particular clone, 24th generation, somewhere down the way, we call him Richard or something, he has a continuous memory all the way back to original Bob. So he doesn't think of himself as a 24th generation clone necessarily. He thinks of himself as Bob, having gone through several clonings and 300 years of experience. But each cloning will have made him slightly different than original Bob.
And this is where the conflict in Heaven's River comes from. We don't want to give too much away to people who haven't listened to it yet. But this is the essence of the conflict. I mean, it's really a beautiful book in that it works on two levels. One is it's a very big, broad space adventure where they come on this new world and have an adventure there. But it also is very character driven in that the Bobiverse is threatening not to be the Bobiverse, a unified Bobiverse anymore. And again, without spoiling it too much, that's where I see the real interest in the book and where we might be going from here on out.
Yeah, it's entirely possible for me to paint myself into a corner with the Bobiverse. If I was to keep the Bobs too similar, if I was to keep the virtual reality Bobiverse too pure and good and, you know, best of the best kind of thing, I could end up with a situation where there's simply not enough conflict. And then the stories become mostly about going out exploring strange new worlds and new civilizations, which is not a terrible thing. A lot of my fans like that, but it's very one dimensional. Once you start introducing schisms in the Bobiverse, factions in humanity, throw in a couple of alien races that aren't necessarily friendly anymore, and now you have lots of opportunity for a lot of things to happen.
Another aspect of the series that I find really impressive is that there is a lot of science in these books. I mean, a whole lot of science, and not only in the Bobiverse books, but in Outland is really a science-based book in a lot of ways. The Singularity Trap, very much so. My first reaction is that you must have really paid attention in physics class at some point in your life.
Yeah, I've always been a nerd. Maths and sciences were my favorite subjects, always have been. I've always, read Scientific American and followed sites like Phys.org and physicsforums.com and stuff like that. Very interesting places for finding out about new information and stuff like that.
So when you inject all the science into your writing, do you have experts who you turn to kind of vet what you've done and say, is this physics possible? Could the massive artificial world in Heaven's River, as you've created it, actually exist? What would it be like? Like, how do you actually go through that process of not only incorporating, knowing the science to begin with, but making sure that it makes sense, even in a science fictional setting?
Well, two things that I've specifically done to make sure I got things right was physicsforums.com, which I mentioned before. That's a forum website that's heavily populated by actual physicists, PhD physicists and stuff like that, and it has a large student membership as well. People checking on things. But I posted a question about blowing up a sun for one of the climaxes of all these worlds. And we actually had a fair bit of back and forth before somebody finally sat down and calculated whether or not a planet or a couple of planets smacking into a sun could do anything to the sun. And the guy came back. And again, like I said, this is a PhD physicist. Comes back and says, stars are not very dense. The planets actually would penetrate to quite a distance. So bang, suddenly I have a way to blow up the others.
That's pretty good, because it's not like it's the kind of experiment that you could actually do in a lab.
Yeah, that's very much a paper experiment. Heaven's River was vetted by Isaac Arthur from Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, the SFIA website. He's big on things like megastructures and so forth. So he was one of my main beta readers for that. And he had a few suggestions, but for the most part, I pretty much nailed it.
And so what we're concluding is that you're incredibly smart and and it gets confirmed every time you write a new book.
No, I just read a lot first. I am incredibly anal, is what I am.
Well, that's a good quality. Um, I think you would agree that all of your writing, but particularly the Bobiverse books, present a unique challenge for a narrator who has to portray the same character in dozens of ways, so that they're all the same character, but they're different characters, and each one has a distinct voice. And I would guess that you would agree with me that Ray Porter was the perfect narrator for the job.
Yes. He has an additional quality, I think, that helps him, which is that he has a very conversational tone, or at least he's capable of having a very conversational tone, very informal, and he can give the inflection that you need for sarcasm and confusion and humor and stuff like that. Even above and beyond the fact that he can do different people, he has the range to really portray the attitudes and emotions in the book.
Yeah, as you know, my first experience with the Bobiverse, it was a very lucky experience, was to read the manuscripts as you were writing them and edit them and all that. And I then listened to it later because I had read them. And it really was a case of where the audio experience to me was just a so much different experience from the reading, that when I was reading them for the first time, believe me, I was thinking about how's anyone going to pull this off as far as narrating these goes, because they're just such subtle differences between the characters. And then when I heard uh, the first book, We Are Legion, in audio for the first time, I just thought, this is a perfect marriage right here. We have somebody who's got an incredibly inventive mind, who's come up with this world and how to propagate this character throughout the universe. And then we found somebody who actually gets it, who's not just reading stuff, who really gets it and absorbs it, and just brought it to life to me in an amazing way.
Yeah, and Ray told me that he had a lot of fun recording the Bobiverse books, which can't help but help.
Yep, and he does a bang-up job on Heaven's River, of course. So now that we're 4 books into the Bobiverse, I think the biggest question fans will have is there more to come? And you've kind of hinted at that it is kind of an endless universe to explore.
Yeah, I'll do more than hint. I'm going to keep writing Bobiverse books as long as fans are willing to keep reading them or listening to them. There's an infinite supply of ideas out there, both for novels and maybe for a collection of short stories, for just smaller little things that happen in the Bobiverse. Tales from the Bobiverse.
We call them boblets.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, a whole bunch of boblets. Now, can you give us the very slightest hint what you're working on right now? We've put out there that there's more Bobiverse to come at some point, but again, without too many spoilers, maybe you could tell your fans and everyone listening what you're working on now.
Well, I have 2 books that I'm working on alternately. One is the sequel to Outland, and there's a small but vocal fan base for Outlands, and they keep asking me. And unfortunately, I've been promising it for about 4 years now, so I figure I'm obligated. Earthside is I think about 3/4 done at the moment. And the other book is brand new, not related to anything, and the working title right now is Roadkill, and that is a standalone novel. Although my books have a tendency to draw requests for sequels, so standalone is in quotes. But it's called Roadkill, and it's about a guy who runs over an invisible alien and then finds the alien's spaceship, and then hilarity ensues.
Something that's happened to many of us in the course of our lives. Yeah, it's funny
because when that happens, you run over an invisible alien, you have to take your car into the shop.
I know, and the insurance company would it's like a great excuse for the insurance company when you literally didn't see the guy coming.
There you go.
We're going to look forward to that. Dennis, thank you very much for talking with us. Before we go, I should mention that Audible Originals is going to be presenting a brand new short story by Dennis titled Feedback, also narrated by Ray Porter, I'm happy to say. It's going to be out on November 19th. And good news for our members, it's going to be available as part of your membership in the Audible Plus catalog. And having had the pleasure of reading it, it's a fun story. It's a time travel story, and I think folks are really going to like it. So, Dennis, thanks very much for chatting with us today.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.